region, and the resulting standoff is still ongoing.
We have a clear and open information channel with each other, but we hope the Indian side can take concrete action and practical efforts. The current situation is India is violating the basic principle of international relations as well as the international order, and is damaging the peace and stability in the boundary area.
What are the reasons behind the dispute, and what will the implications be? India has just finished joint naval exercises with the US and Japan, and China has been flexing its military muscles in Tibet. Are current tensions being heightened, and where are they leading? With India in its political season, how will its domestic politics affect the potential for conflict? What role is rising populism in India playing in this round of standoff? As a rapidly rising power in the world, China causes concern to some countries. How can it better manage these relationships, especially with its immediate neighbors?
The current border standoff between China and India has lasted for more than a month, making it the most serious border conflict between the two countries since the 1962 China-India border war. What are the reasons behind this disagreement? Where is the surround of conflict heading? And against the backdrop of China gaining global influence, how can the country and its neighbors better negotiate their relationships with each other? To discuss these issues and more, I'm happy to be joined in the Beijing studio by Liu Yufa, former Chinese Consul General in Mumbai, and KGM Varma, China correspondent of the Press Trust of India. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Mr. Liu and Varma, the Chinese media, which has been very angry ever since the hostilities, quote-unquote, broke out 1 month ago, has been asking, if this is an invasion by the Indian troops into our territory, why hasn't the Chinese government done anything to drive them out? Now, these angry voices are just one small step short of appealing for the use of force to drive them out immediately. What do you think of their anger?
Let me share with you my understanding. Ever since China and India established the strategic partnership relations in the year 2005, both countries have taken the efforts to move the bilateral relations so much forward. Right at the moment, Chinese leaders and the government do not want this incident, quote unquote, to become a stumbling block to impede the overall bilateral relations. Secondly, Chinese side has so far given so much time for the Indian side, for our Indian friends, to take the sensitive measures. According to what I understand from the international law, when people in uniform get across the border to move into the territory of other side, countries of other side, they naturally become the enemies who will have to face three consequences. First, they can pull out voluntarily, or they be captured, or when the border disputes should escalate, they may be killed. So there are three possibilities. I think the Chinese side has standing, there waiting for the Indian side to make the sensitive choice to seek the first scenario. This is the best result for both sides to avoid the eventual confrontation.
How do you forecast the outlook?
Well, to add to Dr. Liu was saying is, there can be a fourth scenario. Why only you're talking about three scenarios? There can be a fourth one, that is status quo. Why can't we restore status quo? There is a
what do you mean by status quo?
That is by stop building the road and Indian troops has to pull back. That is what probably one is looking at.
You mean the Indian troops will have to stand put? They have to stand still. They have to be where they have been.
No, that's right. In the sense that yes,
you mean they occupy the Chinese territory without being driven out?
No, the whole problem started with China laying this particular road. probably early in June or middle of June. And Bhutan has objected to that. Bhutan was the first one to object to that. Their troops objected to that. And then finally, when the PLA started going ahead with the road, then India had to intervene for two reasons. One, of course, because they had there's a friendship treaty between the two countries. They're close allies, and Bhutan doesn't have that kind of a relationship with China, even diplomatic relationship. And secondly, that this particular road, India believes that it is aimed at cutting off its northeast through that narrow corridor of 27 kilometers called the Chicken Neck. So it is of course a disputed area. That is as far as India is concerned, as far as Bhutan is concerned. But the narrative in China is that this is our area, we will be doing whatever it is. We held 19 rounds of border talks, India and China. You have an elaborate mechanisms to discuss the boundary issue. And you held 24 rounds of talks with Bhutan. Why this particular hurry? The questions being asked from India is that why this particular time that has been chosen? This particular road, this particular tri-junction has been a matter of discussion in all the boundary talks between the two countries. In 2012, according to Indian statement that has been issued by the Indian Foreign Ministry, that there is an agreement between the special representatives in 2012 that this particular status quo should not be disturbed unless and until we have an agreement.
We have three questions.
Yeah.
Three questions. What do you mean by status quo? Second, does China have the right to build roads inside its own territory? Third, you said Bhutan protested and asked for negotiations, but under what pressure? Did they ask the Chinese side to stop the construction of the road under tremendous pressure of New Delhi? I mean, is Bhutan a nation that enjoys sovereignty that should not be interfered?
Well, I think here, that's one thing I think my Indian friend has to be clear. Indian military forces have stepped across the border with no warning. And then you were proposing the fourth scenario. We have seen in our neighborhoods, you stepped into my front yard, and when I asked you to move out, and you said, you've got to give me something before I pull out.
Definitely,
Does it sound logical?
No, you are probably one of the senior most diplomats. You worked in both the countries. You're very familiar with the issues. There is no boundary agreement between India and China. Even in Sikkim, for that matter, we have an understanding, perhaps. There is no delineated boundary as such. There is no delineated boundary as far as Bhutan and China is concerned. So what is it that you're trying to say, at least as far as this 86 kilometers area is concerned, that, this is our territory? That's your claim, please. That's where it rests. You cannot see, it's not that somebody is stepping into your house.
According to what I read from the treaty, before I came, I did some homework. The 1890 treaty does claim and make it certain that this section of the borderline between India and China was certain. This is, for all the 3,500 kilometers long of water dispute, this is the only section.
Liu, last time, we also had Mr. Verma on the show discussing the same issue, the same treaty, 1890. The Indian government refused to recognize the 1890 treaty. Let's put it aside.
Okay, whatever.
It will take us hours to clarify positions on both sides.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, do you think it's been an obsessive concern for small neighboring countries of India that they would be easily turned into yet another Sikkim? Because Sikkim became part of India against the gunpoint of New Delhi, against their will. And it's an open secret that Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, or Sri Lanka, they have all been afraid of the enormous regional influence of India.
Angry. I think this
So
sounds
Bhutan cannot enjoy its own sovereignty. It's not able to make its own decisions. So when you say they protested, under what circumstances did the government of Bhutan protest?
You sound a bit propagandist, I would say. It is India's relations with this neighborhood is radically different from China's relationship with it. We have an umbilical cord with every South Asian country It is an undivided subcontinent once. There is an Indian in Nepal. There is a Nepali in India. India's relationship with Nepal and Nepalese people, Nepalese society was probably centuries old. It is not that the trade is connected.
From Russia and
There
step
was.
into Eastern Ukraine to support the Russian-speaking Ukrainian. Is that your point? Is that the propaganda you're talking about?
I'm not going that far. But at the
let
same
me
time,
just,
let me just put
yes,
things
sure,
in
We have
perspective.
minority Chinese in
No.
Myanmar.
No.
Do you mean we send in our troops to
Definitely
protect
not.
the overseas
Definitely
Chinese
not.
in Myanmar and in other neighboring countries in
Definitely
Asia?
not. When India sent its troops
But
to
that's
Sri
the
Lanka,
document, international information I got
about
about the
India
huge
sent
influence of
let me
India
just clarify
to
this.
establish your sphere of influence and
No,
turf.
but
Is
let
that
me-
the turf battle?
But let me clarify this, that when India sent its troops to Sri Lanka for what it was, to set right things, even at the invitation of Sri Lankan government, when things are
Why
turned
was
south-
the Indian
No,
government so reluctant
No,
to
let me
support
come
the
to
war
point.
against the Tamil Tiger? Because you had a large Indian Tamil presence inside India,
why
and
should
you were
say-
afraid of the unrest, ethnic unrest.
No,
right?
no. Let me put things in perspective for you. Sri Lanka, the Tamils are part of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is made up
You
of
have Tamils
Tamils and
inside
Sinhalese.
India.
It
You
is
are
not.
afraid of the unrest by the ethnic group inside your country,
the
and they are
Sinhalese-
also Tamil.
The Sinhalese also
Or
share.
sympathizers.
No, the Sinhalese also share the blood relationship with India. They're not that. This is what I'm saying.
Let's come back to the
Yeah.
point.
Let's come back to your point.
You know, the
First of all, do you
ethnic.
think, do you think this is an obsessive concern for neighboring countries of India that they would be easily transformed into yet another Sikkim? And the annexation of Sikkim took place under very unusual circumstances.
As a diplomat who was posted in your country for 2 years, I was watching. You know, it's my professional obligations. You talked about the kind of ethnic linkage between India and all the neighboring countries. It is true. All the countries on Southeast Asia has the same ethnic tradition linkage. But what I want to stress is they do not give India automatically the right to do whatever you want to
Definitely,
interfere.
I agree with you. Definitely.
So
once
the
there are
ethnic
borders, there are no rights.
Yeah, once they are independent, they are just independent actors. But in this regard, you're using Bhutan as the card that I have the right to moving troops.
I've
into
been working here for the past 7 years. Never I heard from China this kind of an allegation. And suddenly you have a border problem with Bhutan, and of course now India's entered into it. Suddenly you say you're questioning the India-Bhutan relationship. This is a relationship that is when PRC was formed, when India was formed. It continued. All these years.
Rama, you put finger on a very interesting issue about the timing. The timing is about the meeting that Prime Minister Modi had with President Donald Trump. It seems you have got a strong message, because you hold a joint naval exercise in the Indian Ocean, the Malabar naval.
Let me throw the ball back to you.
Was that a message that you delivered deliberately to China? Look, we enjoy the strong backing from Japan and the US. Now it's time for Prime Minister Modi to come across as a tough guy.
Now, let me throw the ball back to you. That who started building the road when Modi, well before Modi goes to US? The whole problem started not by India. Now you started the road, then the Bhutanese objected, then Indians are intervened. By the time that Modi visit was taking place, the timing of it is not India's fault. So please don't again come to that. I mean, I'm not a government
We
representative.
have different interpretations about the timing. You have the small frame of the timing. You have the broad geopolitical framework.
Can I intervene?